Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Deva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhus cha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavakitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are in chapter 3, Karma Yoga, and we are again working on these 5 elements in chapter 3 that Krishna presents. We will review them again. I know I've said them every week. By the way, was that Sophia that came in? Who came in?
Nikki.
I think. Nikki?
Yes, Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
Good to see you. Sorry, I'm late.
Act, O Arjuna. We do not gain freedom by running away from the world. 2, how do we act according to our inherent latent proclivities? Ride the horse in the direction it's going. Or as Krishna says here, according to our swadharma. 3, in the yajna spirit, in the spirit of service, in the spirit of sacrifice. 4, renouncing our attachment to the karma phalam, the fruits of action. Right is to work alone, never to its fruits. The 5th one we worked on last week, our renunciation of the sense of agency. It seems to me like I, the individual, choose to do that, and I don't choose to do that. And Krishna says, well, actually, we have the experience of having a desire arise, and we choose and act on it. Where does it come from? Guna and karma. Qualities of mind and the force of the past. You could not have done any differently than you did. Therefore, there's no point in regretting the past. Oh, I got involved with such a horrible person. No mistake. You could do no other. Oh, I made this mistake in business. You could not have done any other than what you did. and no worry about the future. You're going to do what you're going to do. And Krishna says, our peace of mind, our serenity is independent of the circumstances of the world. According to guna and karma, every one of us gets our allotted dose of joys and sorrows, successes and failures. But the yogi steps out of the rat race, watches the equipment, the bodies, the body, mind, intellect function in the world. Stay ever identified with the witnessing consciousness. All right, 34, is that where we are?
Number 30.
Number 30. Okay, will you help us out, please, Anand? Did Deepa log on, by the way?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Mayi sarvani karmani samyasyadhyatmachetasa nirashirnirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvaraha. Renouncing all actions in me with the mind centered on the self, free from hope and egoism or ownership, free from mental fever, you do fight.
Yes. So fight here means whatever our particular challenge is in this world, be it our job, be it relationship, be it family, whatever it is. What does Krishna invite us to do? So let's take each one of these ideas and review it. The first idea, please.
Renouncing, should I read the whole thing?
Just the first idea.
With the mind centered on the self.
Yes. So I am not the body. I am not the prana, the energy. I am not the feelings, the mind. I am not the thoughts, the buddhi. What am I? Chidakasha, the space of pure awareness. So ever staying identified with the knower of all this. We watch the equipment play its role in. Next idea.
Free from hope and egoism or ownership.
Yes. So by hope, here he means I hope it's going to be better if I move to Chicago. I hope it's going to be better if I get a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I hope it's going to be better if I get rid of the boyfriend or girlfriend. I hope it's going to be better if I get a bigger house. I hope it's going to be better if I get rid of this awful house. You're laughing. Sound familiar?
Yes.
I'll be happy when it'll be better if the mind says change the circumstances. Here Krishna says that's rooted in ignorance. If you get a different relationship, it'll just be different. If you get a different house or get rid of the house, it'll just be different. But it will not bring lasting peace. Why? Because the world is impermanent. It's always changing, and your mind is changing. So here, this is the hope that Krishna invites us to let go of. And the other idea was egoism, right?
Mhm.
So letting go of this personal sense of self. Now, let's review what our problem is. As we discussed in depth in the second chapter, for those of us who are taking the Atmabodha class, what is my problem? What's the root of my problem? Who remembers?
Spiritual ignorance.
Yes. And that spiritual ignorance, the non-apprehension of my essential nature, is caused by what we call avidya, ignorance, which is comprised of vasana, the bundle of these impressions left in the unconscious as the result of previously performed actions. And a vasana has two powers. First, veiling power, avarana shakti. Like going to sleep. I spiritually go to sleep. Second power, vikshepa shakti, which means projecting power. The root is shipati, which means to throw, like hurling a spear. So the mind goes, what does it project? The individual sense of self. We call it ahankara, egoism. We call it asmita, another name for egoism. My favorite is jiva bhavana, the feeling or the thought that I'm an individual. Usually I am my body, or I am my body plus my subtle body. I'm a transmigrating soul. I gotta be careful or I'm gonna be a kimono dragon in my next life. You know, this kind of stuff. But it's still, I am an individual. That jiva bhavana is the first projection, the I thought I'm a person. Simultaneously with that is a world of name and form that I see as separate from me, that is inherently joy-giving and misery-producing. Third element is struggle. Technical term is kartavya, obligatory action, jonesing. Be happy when, it'll be better if. My addictive relationship with the world. Those three ideas. I feel like a person, there's a goal, and there's struggle. That's my suffering. That is samsara. That is the wheel of karma. That's the cycle of reincarnation. That's the problem. It's easy to understand if you go to the dream state. You are the god of your dream. First thing that happens when you go to bed at night, avarana shakti. You have the non-apprehension of yourself as the waker. That's called sleep. Then you have vikshepa shakti. You project the dream. And in the dream, you've got a dream body and a dream ego and a dream world and dream thoughts and feelings. And it seems so real. We do not grasp its unreality till we wake up. So yoga is inviting us to wake up from the waking state. That doesn't mean you get a new ego. You see that no personal sense of self is real. Now, listen very carefully. The shift between the dreamer and the waker is a gross shift in consciousness. The alarm goes off and, oh God, what a weird dream. The shift from thinking I'm a person to knowing I am Brahman, though profound, is subtle. What do I mean? We just tune up the mind a bit. Just see if you can just stop the thoughting. Just listen to the sound of the traffic. And in that empty mind, who or what, here's the traffic. Notice the knower. See, there's no person there. It's just vast, empty space of consciousness. Where did my ego go? It's gone just as definitely as the dreamer went. It's just far more subtle. Now, when I'm in that state where I've let everything go, the mind has retired into the sun. No problems, no worries. Then I just perceive this dreamlike world going by. Next idea.
Free from mental fever.
Yeah. The cause of the mental fever. It is the result of false identification. I'm a person. I got issues. I gotta solve this, fix that. It only takes two forms. I either need to fix the world or I need to fix me. But that vimarsha, that deliberation, that vikalpa, that thoughting, that mental fever, rather than trying to resolve the struggle of ego, drop the struggle. And I think that's all the pieces of the verse. We get them all?
Yes.
All right. Any thoughts on this before we move on? Next verse.
Ye me matamidam nityam manutishtanti tishtanti manavaha shraddhavanton nasuyanto muchyante tepi karmabhihi. Those people who constantly practice this teaching of mine, full of faith and without cavilling,
Yeah.
they too are freed from actions.
Yes. So the promise is if we practice this fivefold karma yoga, we will exhaust vasana without creating new ones. Because we've set up a condition where karma's mature, we're impelled into the world. But if we're detached from the fruits of action, detached from the sense of agency, giving up my investment into success and failure, joy and sorrow, get emptied out mind gets quieter. And then self-abidance, tiring into the self gets easier. But if, on the other hand, I decide, well, I want to indiscriminately dance with the objects of the world. Knock yourself out. I think that boyfriend or girlfriend is real. I think that job is real. I think that widget is real. Understand what will happen. Desire and object of desire become one. Mind stops with that mediated sense of myself, a kiss of the bliss of Brahman, and I attribute the happiness to the object. It creates avasana. So we will happily return your misery. You may have it back. We talk a lot about what we call adhyasa, superimposition. The person steps on the wet length of rope and goes, ah, it's a snake. I superimposed a snake on the rope. No, stop, examine. There's no snake there, it's a rope. But, you know, I just love smooching snakes. It's not a snake, it's a rope. Shut up. I'm smooching that snake. It's just a slimy piece of rope. Shut up. That's what we do. I'm gonna go looking for snakes now. Knock yourself out. You have as many lifetimes as you need to come to the truth. The world isn't bad. It's shunyata. It's empty. Trinkets and baubles. It's not a precious gem, it's colored glass. In the end, it's all God. But the names and forms are just ephemeral. It's like a person who gets in the car and spends all their time trying to drive to the end of the rainbow to get the pot of gold. The rainbow is seen and it's beautiful, but there's no pot of gold. But Maya, so powerful. Hear it. We look to our direct experience. Yeah. We forget. Over. Next verse.
Ye tve tab.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
cabal means to argue.
Okay, I've
That's
never
right.
heard that word before.
Yeah.
Ye tve tadabhyasuyanto nanutishtanti me matam sarvajnana vimudham stan vidhi nashtan na chetasaha. But those who carp at my teaching and do not practice it, deluded in all knowledge and devoid of discrimination, know them to be doomed to destruction.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean they go to some place called hell or the world of the ghosts or anything like that. It means if you live your life the way most people live it, then you get to continue to live in the funny farm of the world of samsara. Round and round and round. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, better different, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, cash and prizes. And the problem is we compare our insides to somebody else's outsides. Look at them, they're going on a skiing trip in Switzerland this year. And then they took a cruise of the Caribbean and they got really cool jewelry and clothes and stuff like that. And oh, their boyfriend or girlfriend is so hot, and stuff like that. But you have no idea what's going on behind closed doors, inside their own hearts. Good classic example. We just saw the coronation of King Charles. And on YouTube, there have been some reminders of Princess Diana. Wealthy, noble, aristocratic family. Grew up in one of the biggest, nicest mansions in all of England. Married the best, the Prince of Wales. Gorgeous jewelry. But by her own confession, not a happy camper. Stuff doesn't work. Now, going back to what Krishna's saying, if you act in an intelligent way in the world, first of all, your life will be a lot easier. You won't be fighting your own self-nature. You give up your attachment to the results. If you live a life of service, all over to God. You're gonna do what you're gonna do. Don't worry. Understand that our peace is independent of the world. So Gita says, knock yourself out. And what I recommend, maybe Gita is wrong. Maybe the masters are wrong. Why not go out there and struggle? Go after it. Manifest. Then in 6 months, be honest. Take a look. How's that working out for you? If you stay conscious and really examine, yeah, there's some joy in the world, but it's incredibly short-lived. A whole lot of work. Like I said, 95 cents worth of work for a nickel's worth of joy. then it passes. Be a spiritual scientist. Don't act on blind or ignorant faith. Swamiji used to thunder, blind faith is stupid faith, and it will fail you in a crisis. Shraddha, faith, needs to be rooted in science. Thoughtful analysis, direct experience. We're invited to not fool ourselves anymore. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Sadarsham cheshtate swasya prakritir jnanavanapi prakrityum yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Even a wise person acts in accordance with their own nature. Beings will follow their own nature. What can restraint do?
And I think in this world, one of the greatest common examples of this is when someone denies coming out as opposed to coming out of the closet as being gay or lesbian or whatever your particular sexual proclivities are. You can, for a time, act contrary to your nature. But if you've ever talked with anybody who's gone through like conversion therapy, or pray away the gay, all that kind of stuff. Anybody know people like that or done that themselves? Successful?
No.
Yeah. And how does it make you feel to go through all that stuff?
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah. So this is why I say, don't strive to be spiritual by some sort of externally determined moral code. Instead, strive for authenticity. Strive for integrity. Now, Shakespeare puts this in the mouth of Polonius, and in a way it's comic, but it's a very true statement. And this above all, to thine own self be true. So incredibly important. Now, ethical precepts that we find in the yamas and the yamas, like truthfulness, straightforwardness, purity. Those things that we find in yoga, they have to do with practices that help us not get involved in situations that in fact will make us unhappy. So, for example, if you lie, cheat, and steal, first of all, that's not your swadharma. We're not built that way. The end result is it makes us very unhappy. Best way to understand how to be ethical is to understand the law of karma. Whatever volitional energy you put out, thought or action, will return in kind. So we do not get what we want in life. Unfortunately, we don't even get what we need. We get the inevitable results of the force of our past. So the intelligent person examines how to think, feel, believe, act in a way that doesn't mess up their own life and doesn't mess up other people's lives, just because it makes living in the world more simple. It's not because there's some God who's going to give you a gold star. You know, case in point, don't punch policemen. What happens when you punch a policeman?
You go to jail.
Uh-huh. God doesn't send you to jail. You get the inevitable result of your action. If you cheat on your taxes, there's a good chance at some point you're going to get caught. What's going to happen? You get to deal with it. So ethical behavior, as opposed to morality, which is externally determined, becomes very clear if we understand the right view of our karmic situation. Any thoughts on this? All right. Yes, did you have a
Yeah.
question, Nikki?
I guess it's just hard to, sometimes it's like clear cut, like what, like intuitively is ethically correct, or like is intuitively what your dharma is. And sometimes it's like less clear. And does that mean that we need to just meditate on it for longer? Like,
Just really, the more quiet your mind is, the clearer it will be. Oscillating. Well, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? I ask myself questions like, if I were independently wealthy and all the contacts, all the connections in the world, would I do this action? Then I get to find out, oh, am I acting out of fear? Am I acting out of lack? Does that make sense?
yeah.
Another one, you can't do someone else's yoga. Well, I'm not being mean-spirited or violent. I'm just pointing out to the other person. Can't do someone else's yoga. How does the Master Jesus say? Before you try to remove the splinter in someone else's eye, try taking the log out of your own first. That's the other thing. When in doubt, I love the Buddhist recipe for right speech. Is it kind? Is it truthful? Is it timely? Is it necessary? Real simple. Just run by what you're going to say through that screen, that filter. And practice restraint of pen, tongue, and send button. Is that helpful?
It is. I just have one more question.
Yeah.
You can't do somebody else's yoga for sure. How do you apply that? So, like I'm an addiction doctor. I specialize in addiction medicine. And yeah, like our kind of current ethos is very much one of like harm reduction,
Mhm.
meeting people where they're at. And there's obviously like a contrary side to this also. What do you, if you're not doing other people's yoga, how do you watch them suffer?
What do you do?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, they're coming to you.
Mhm.
You've been empowered to be useful, to be helpful. For
Sometimes-
example, you've come here, you're in satsang here in my Gita class,
Mhm.
and you've asked me a question.
Mhm.
So I'm empowered to give you my best thinking.
Mhm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not doing your yoga, but I do feel it's my responsibility to answer your question.
Mhm.
So you're in a similar situation. I assume people are there by their own volition. Are they?
Yeah.
Or are they involuntarily hospitalized and you're trying to give them good advice and stuff like that?
A little bit of both.
Okay. Well, my experience is, you really can't get a person to stop using until they want to do it.
Mhm.
You can even make suggestions, but there's no guarantee they're going to follow them. This is the great heartbreak of being involved in addiction medicine. I'm sure you've experienced it. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
You might say, you need to, if you're going to shoot heroin, you should at least try to use clean needles. Guess what? They probably won't once they're high. Am I wrong? Do they forget and go back to perhaps old behavior?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's hard about it is yeah, there are in altered states almost like the children we tell them what to do sometimes because they're children and they don't have the prefrontal cortex to make their own decisions all the
If
time.
mommy's loaded, what do you do? Yeah. But all you can do is your best. That's all any of us can do. But in modern parlance, we have terms called codependence.
Mhm.
So I remember a fellow who came in, was sitting on the couch right where Vinayak is, so angry. And he was in program. And he was saying, I was working with so-and-so, and I was telling them what to do, and they would not do what I told them to do. I was wondering if I should fire them, stuff like that. Now, first of all, they're not paying you. This is not a job. Oh, aren't you powerful? You must think you're God. All we can do is make suggestions. And it is a tough battleground that you're fighting in. Tough battleground. I fight it. But,
Thank you.
and that doesn't mean we don't continue to fight and do our best. And what I try to do is I deal with the addict that's right in front of me. What can I do right now to alleviate their suffering? I can make suggestions and hand them tools, but until they're ready, chances are maybe I can save their life today. But this is where you can do karma yoga. You can spend, a couple hours with a patient. And when they walk out of your office or you walk out of their hospital room, let go of your attachment to the fruits of the action.
Mhm.
And they're either going to live or die in God's time. I sponsor a lot of guys. Had another friend who said, "Oh, Jim, how do you manage to do that? I can only work with like 2 guys a day, and I'm exhausted if I do that. It's such a drain, it's such a burden, you know." Not me, because I take no responsibility for their recovery. I'm not that powerful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean I don't work very hard. And I always there as best I can, as I am with you people doing yoga. But just like each one of us must do our own yoga, the guru is a temporary psychological device. The guru is a midwife. The guru is a gardener, may do a little pruning. But each one of us has to do our own yoga. Krishna will say a person raises themselves into the self by themselves. We do the work. It's the same thing with an addict or an alcoholic. They must do the work. And there is a place for harm reduction, in my opinion. And I'm a 12-stepper. I don't think, frankly, anybody will become a moderate heroin addict. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
It's not going to happen. But you might save their life today.
Mhm.
You might keep from getting shot, getting an infection.
Mhm.
But my experience is, in the end, that's not what's going to really create the psychic change for a person to live a different life. And we can talk more about this. Sure. But for you, my suggestion, stay with the patient that's in front of you. Meet them where they're at. Do what you can. Do no harm. And let go of the results. Knowing they'll probably be back next week. If they're not in the hospital. Or dead. It's the nature of the disease. All right, we got off on a bit of a tangent, but it's an important
It was very beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's the same thing. Let's say you have someone who keeps going back to an abusive relationship. And you ever have any friends who've done that?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, dump the idiot. And then 2 weeks later, oh yes, I'm dumping him, but I just went back, got together with him for one night. And well, why? God, they're horrible to you. They beat the crap out of you. Well, I'm trying to help him. You always come up with excuses.
Well, it's like I can see that in my own behavior. You know, anytime I'm doing something that's harmful for myself and I keep doing it, it's just a different type of being a heroin addict.
Yeah.
It's no different, really. Addiction is addiction.
Yeah.
Some of them are just more harmful to the body.
And some are socially acceptable and some are not.
Yeah. But they're all the same.
Being a workaholic is socially acceptable. Being a heroin addict is not.
Yeah.
But what yoga would say is people who are not yogis, who are not working a spiritual path, in some way have an addictive relationship with the world. And Krishna's going to say this as we get to about the last half a dozen verses of this chapter. He's going to really talk about it. How are we doing on time? What verse are we on?
34 will be the next verse.
Okay, next one.
Indriyasyarthe ragadveshau vyavasthitau tayornavashamagachet tauhyasya paripantino. Attachment and aversion for the objects of the senses abide in the senses. Let none come under their sway, for they are a person's foes.
Yes. So, when the situation is conducive, the mind is happy. When the situation is non-conducive, the mind is unhappy. And it's incredibly mechanical. I'm going to tell you a true story. When I was in the ashram, we're talking about 1975. Across the street from the house in which we all lived was Cala Foods in the Hague. We all had different times that we were assigned to go do the shopping for the community. My turn. Cala Foods. Got all the stuff in my cart and I'm in line to check out. And there are several people ahead of me. Further ahead, there was this guy and he was essentially blocked by a couple other people in the line. But there was this just shock of curly blonde hair. And he was kind of tall. And so I was, ooh, he was kind of hot. Then all of a sudden, the person that was blocking him moved and his chin was too small. I just laughed at my mind. It's like I had a card file of what's attractive. This kind of hair, this kind of nose, this kind of chin, these kind of eyes, these kind of arms, hold up the little cards, and if enough of them meet, and it's so mechanical and mindless. What is it? Just based on the force of the past. Conducive environment, non-conducive environment. That's all it is. It's nothing real. So what Krishna's saying here is your mind's going to do this. Later on, we'll work on how to keep the mind deeply introverted. We call this shama. That peace of mind when you disengaged from letting your energy gush out into the world after having again and again, punaha, detached your mind from the chaos of the sense objects through a steady observation of their defects. If I cheat on my wife, think it through what's going to happen. She's going to be mad. Happy wife means happy life. I don't think I'm going to do that. Oh, I really want to buy that necklace. It's only $25,000. Think it through. You can buy the necklace. You're going to be paying for it on your credit card for the next 3 years. Do you want to do that? Think it through. Detach ourselves over and over again. Chaos. Extra. Ultimately, we see if I indiscriminately revel with the objects of the senses and attribute joy-giving and misery-producing qualities, it's going to create more vasana. It's not a moral issue, it's mechanical. Think it through. So you stand back, you stay in the viewpoint of the witness. We call it Sakshi Bhava, the attitude of the witness. You watch the mind. The main thing to be watching for. What's it feel like to want something you don't have? It sucks. Kama. Craving. One of the things going back to 12-step model, only the first half of the first step deals with alcohol. I admitted I was powerless over alcohol or heroin or food or smoking, whatever it is. My life is unmanageable by me. All the rest of the steps are intended to provide the person with a spiritual experience, so that the desire to drink, use, gamble, etc. is removed. I'm not making this up. It's good yoga. So I love it. But yoga teaches the same thing. Thank God, God is the most beloved, or we'd all be screwed. This is why, in the end, keep seeking the infinite. Don't worry too much about the world. The world's problematic, yeah, but if basically it's just low-level discontent. Love God. Turn your mind to the self, and the world will leave you. You don't have to worry about it. Any thoughts on this? Are you scratching or raising your hand? I'm just scratching. Okay. Next one.
Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushthitat swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. Better is one's own duty, though devoid of merit, than the duty of another, well discharged. Better is death in one's own duty. The duty of another is fraught with fear and is productive of positive danger.
Yes. So there's an old story. In Japan, they fertilize the rice paddies with night soil, meaning human excrement. Once upon a time, there was a farmer who just didn't want to deal with his own shit. So when it came time to fertilize his rice paddies, he takes his donkey and he goes to the next village to buy their night soil to put on his fields. So, what is the import of the story? It's all just shit. What I mean is, right here, right now, your God, your higher power, your karma, doesn't matter how you want to frame it, is bringing to you exactly what we all need to experience. And if I don't want this circumstance and I want to jump ship, go have a different circumstance, knock yourself out. Like the farmer who wants to deal with the neighbor's ship. But it's all going to be the same in the end. And what is the lesson we need to learn? Let go and keep our hearts open. Over and over and over again. Don't take it personally. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. Don't worry. It's all going to work out. But we get this idea, what's wrong with my life is the externals. Let me go jump into another set of externals. And listen very carefully. If your swadharma is that you have worldly ambitions, you have a desire for relationship, you want to do art or music as well as a career, and you think it's going to be more spiritual, you go live in an ashram or go to India. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. And even if you do very well in the ashram, controlling for a time, eventually your own swadharma will will out. How many times have I seen people in ashrams get into all sorts of trouble because they're breaking the rules around sex? Why don't you go get married? We have this idea, oh, it'll be so much better if I do this career instead of that career. It might be different. You'll know. You'll know. How do I know if I'm following my swadharma? Because the doing brings me joy. That's how I know. So here Krishna says, better one's own swadharma, even if in the world's eyes it doesn't seem very meritorious. And if you don't do it very well even, then endeavoring to live somebody else's life out of what we would call today super ego. This is what my parents think I should do. This is what my caste or station in life says I should do. Our family are these kinds of people, etc., etc., etc. And you may be good at it, but you're fighting something all the time. A gay man can get married, care for a wife, have children. Very rewarding. But he knows there's something inauthentic. Or a person takes on a vow of celibacy because of some spiritual idea. It's very probably in the wrong job. Any thoughts on this? What if my swadharma is to be a thief? Probably it isn't. because deep inside, we're all one. It is never our swadharma to do violence to ourselves or other people. How do I know I'm doing the right thing? Doing God's will brings us peace. Following your swadharma will bring you peace. Any thoughts on this? One more.
Arjuna Vacha.
Nope, we'll stop here
Okay.
because then he starts a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation. All right, we've got about 5 minutes, so we can maybe have time for a few questions before we end.
Jim, I have a question.
Shweta, go right ahead.
It's about the discussion we were having earlier about people in abusive relationships, how, they can't get out of it, and such other addictions. My question is, can you help me understand why people do this to themselves? Like, as an example, I have somebody close who's always very, very angry about a particular person. And this person is almost ineffective in their lives. That person has almost no role to play. But every time I meet my friend, she's just seething in anger and kind of bringing up all these other things about this person and so on. And I keep wondering, why does she do this to herself? So can you help me understand why people get into these habits that are so self-destructive?
Because it's familiar. Something in their past, probably from their family of origin, is resonant. The mind prefers the familiar. It will frequently prefer the familiar to the good. Now, one of our kleshas, this is in the human afflictions, the human condition, we would much rather blame other people for our problems than take responsibility for them. And when a person is in that mind state, it's all the other person's fault. They're doing this to me. I'm an innocent victim. There's probably not a whole lot you can do except love them and just listen. But your yoga, if you're like me, I'm a raging codependent. I want to fix people. When other people are suffering, I've got a whole bunch of good ideas on how to fix them. Sound familiar?
Yeah, I've been doing better with that, but I do have.
Yeah. I'm doing better too, but it isn't on. So when, as Swamiji used to say, here in satsang, the higher part of my mind is talking to the lower part of my mind. And if you people overhear the conversation and get value, well and good. But this is my yoga to hear this. See. So understand that your serenity gets robbed when you get all wrapped up trying to help actually fix your friend. And the best thing you can do and the best thing I can do is just be present. Just listen. And that's very hard for those of us who are codependent. Does that make sense, Shweta?
Yes, Jim. Both the things are very helpful. The thing about familiarity is very helpful. I'll reflect more on that. Because for me, every time my mind throws up this question mark, like, why is she doing this? Why is she doing this to herself? So I will think more about this.
So going back to our discussion earlier about alcoholism and addiction, now you correct me, Nikki, if I'm wrong, but the statistics I was told that if you are the child of an alcoholic, you have a 50% chance of becoming one, or listen, marrying one. You heard those statistics too?
Mhm.
Why in God's name, having grown up in an alcoholic home with an alcoholic parent, with a shit show, would you marry someone like that? Because it's familiar. And it's all unconscious. It's all unconscious. Now, did you have a question?
You know, it's too big and too vague.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock. If it comes to you, write it down. We'll talk about it next time.
All right.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.